Well, welcome to the final episode of Women Work and Calling, Ages and Stages, how women work and lead across seasons of life. We're here today to talk about the third. Please put your name in the chat and where you're from, and we'll be asking you to put questions in there in a little bit as well. In just a moment, we'll get started. All right. Well, looks like the room is filling up. Very exciting. I'm happy to be here today on behalf of the Denver Institute and the DePree Center at Fuller Seminary, who are partnering together on this amazing series for women. This is the last in a series of 4 webinars that have been done. And we are going to be talking today about the third, which might arguably be the last season of life. And I'm Lisa Slayton. I do some work with the Denver Institute. I'm a longtime friend of the DePree Center as well. For those of you who know Michaela O'Donnell, who runs the DePree Center, she and I co-authored a book that came out last year. And I'm very passionate about helping women understand how to lead and work out of who God intended them to be in every season of life. I am delighted today to have with me Mary Andringa. I want to make sure I say that right. Mary Vermeer Andringa, who ran a business and grew a business for many, many years, the Vermeer Corporation, and now sits in an emeritus role as the chair, and has been probably one of the most thoughtful people I've encountered around understanding how to think about the season of the third. So welcome, Mary. We're delighted you're here today. Mary also serves on the board for the DePree Center and has been a longtime advisor of their work. What's third all about? Give us a little bit of an insight.
My husband and me, and it was all about how to retire to a fruitful stage of life. And we were not ready to retire 20 years ago. Yeah. But we found the seminar that he did with us and his writings, his book, to be very helpful, because it started us to think on the path about how we are going to prepare for third phase of life. And so in third, we talk a lot about, you've got 5 areas of wealth in your life, and we have these in all stages of our life. And so often when you get to third, what is talked about the most is the financial part of wealth.
Yeah.
But in reality, we've got relational wealth, we've got physical wealth, we've got spiritual wealth, we've got intellectual wealth. And if we start to think about how we are preparing ourselves to grow in all those areas of wealth, even 10 to 20 years before we're ready to quote go to third phase or retirement, we're going to be in a lot better shape than if we hadn't done any of that, or maybe just thought about financial. And so we thought it was sort of like great thinking. And also we talk a lot about how you really have 3 paths to choose as you get to third phase. You can be indulgent, you can be indifferent, or you can be influential. And really, if you probably don't choose a path, you're being indifferent. And what was been fun is my husband's a retired physician, and so he was a general internist. So he saw a lot of people going into third phase, some of them having a very clear path of what they wanted to do in third phase, and having plans, and having an opportunity to use the skills and the passions they've had throughout their life. And then he also saw a number of people who really had no plans, and were just going to go and play golf and enjoy the sun, which is not bad. I like to enjoy the sun too.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a little bit, I use all the experiences I've had in the past. So what really tripped me triggers to get something going for us at Vermeer was I was on my way to a retirement coffee. I was still CEO at the time. And I was going to meet with one of our retirees, and he brought his family in and friends and, you know, in-laws and that sort of thing. And he had quite a plan for the things that he was looking forward to being able to do in third phase. I also went to say thank you to one of our employees who was on the manufacturing floor. And the HR person told me, hey, could you go and say thank you also to Bob? He's retiring, but he does not want to have a party. And I said to him, you know, what are you looking forward to in this next phase? And he said, I have no idea. I'm scared to death.
Interesting.
You
Yeah.
know, something that we could do as employers, because we really do try to take care of the whole person in our company.
Very much.
But it's really helping people think ahead and prepare ahead for how to use the skills, the expertise, the experiences they've already had in their life, and how to turn those into things that will bring them a lot of joy in third phase. So that's kind of my background.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I want to come back in a minute and unpack the 5 kinds of wealth or resource that we have, because I think that's a really important shift that many of us need to make. So much emphasis around retirement is on financial health and wealth, and yet we have all these other resources that we need to be stewarding very well. Let's dial back for a minute though and talk a little bit about a biblical basis for looking at this season of life a little differently. Between the time that you and I first talked and today, I mentioned before we started that I did a quick search of Bible references to retirement. And there aren't very many. In fact, the only one that uses a word that mostly translates to our word for retirement is found in Numbers 8, I think. And it's an instruction to the Levites who are guarding the temple to retire or return at age 50 back into service of the temple, but no longer have to guard it. Now, theologians out there may not have gotten that exactly right, but there is not really a true biblical mandate or under theological principle that says we retire, right? And so, you know, and you've worked all your life. You ran a big corporation. You have 4,500 plus team members globally, and cared for people and did big projects. I mean, you were producing material goods and things that really mattered for good work to be done well. That must feel a little different in this season. And I'm curious, you know, for going from one kind of work to another. Maybe it's not as dramatic as I think it is, but I'd love to hear you talk about that.
For one thing, you know, the Bible does talk a lot about people in their elder years really can be wise counsel to others. And I think that's a big opportunity for those of us in third phase. But you know, making that transition, I'm going to tell you the truth, that making that transition is not easy, because I love my work. I love my work at Vermeer. I love the people. I love the projects. But I was ready for some more flexibility in my life. And my husband and I were ready for that together. And so it's been a good thing. But when you leave something that you do love, it isn't really easy. So you have to be pretty intentional about it. In fact, I went through a bit of a grieving process myself. And one of our chaplains, we have 5 chaplains at our Pella location, and they're phenomenal. And one of the chaplains I connected with I said, you know, I'm having some difficulty with this, because it was also during COVID, which didn't help. And she was great. And she basically said, you know, I think you need to go through the stages of grieving, because anything Scott Kermode always talks about, any change is a loss, and a change is in transition. But I think that's why it's so important to be very intentional about starting to plan for third phase, so that you can plan to go to something by using the skills and experience and passions you have, but take it to something, maybe something else, something different. It might be mentoring. I mean, one of the things that I really do enjoy a lot, and that's part of third phase too, by the way, thinking about what are the things that give you joy, because you can say no to some of the things that maybe, you know, you had to do in your work life, but it wasn't your favorite thing to do, right? And you can really think about what is it when I'm almost in the zone that I love to do. And so one of the things I've really enjoyed is just being often an informal mentor, particularly to women in business and women in family-held businesses, which presents its own set of challenges and circumstances. When I worked with a father, I worked with two brothers, I worked with a son who's now CEO of the business. And sometimes those family relationships are tough. So one of the things that I have really enjoyed is just being a listening ear for particularly other women. I've also done this with some men, talking about some of the issues they've gone through. And just I can be a safe person for someone to tell their frustrations, their challenges, and then maybe just share a little bit about how I've probably been through that same challenge or something similar, and sort of how I tried to work through it. So again, transitioning to something that you can use your skills and experience, but it's in a different context and works very well in third phase.
Yeah, I that's so helpful, Mary. Thank you. I think I remember you saying that one of the things you did in preparation was to do a little bit of self-reflection work, and did the Strength Finders, for example, which is an assessment tool. And the Gallup organization defines a strength not necessarily as something that you're good at, but it's something that brings you energy and life. It doesn't drain you. And for those of us who've had careers and been in the workforce for a long time, there are lots of things that we're good at or even great at that we don't love, right? And being able to say no to some of those things is like, oh, I don't have to do this anymore. Conversely, I think there is something about this season, and you've already touched on it a little bit, that allows us to make choices about what we give away, right? Is there I know you work closely with a friend to the DePree Center, Uli Chi. He's on the board of advisors as well, and he's just written a book about being a wise leader. And wisdom is something that we don't want to possess and clutch. We want to give it away, right? We want to help others. And in this season, hopefully, we've all accrued a little bit of wisdom. You talked about mentoring women in particular in business. Give us a little shape and texture to that. What does that look like for you? Do you meet with women one-on-one? Do you have groups? How have you chosen to put some of that into your portfolio?
It's been mostly one-on-one, although there were two young women who were working together in the marketing area of our business who asked me to meet with them. So I met with them several times for coffee, usually off campus, and would just talk about, because they were working almost like two in a box and wanted to know how to make that work best. And my brother and I worked sort of like two in a box for a while in the time that I served at Vermeer. So just really sharing what I really appreciate is when someone who wants to meet with me, and it's not always an ongoing mentor relationship. Sometimes it's just, I don't think I can be a full-time mentor to you, but I'm happy to meet with you on Zoom or for coffee. And I've done that often, and maybe a couple times. So I don't see it being a long-term thing, but something just to do some sharing for, coffee or two. But I think just being able to, again, share the story. Max DePree talks about how a bird doesn't sing because it knows all the answer. It sings because it has a song. We all have our own songs. We all have our own stories, and we can share our story or even listen to somebody else's story, right? That's the most important thing. But then share something that we might have alike. And again, just to be honest with you, just recently it was my granddaughter who wanted to talk to me about what it means to be a woman in business, and how do you do that if you also want to be married and have a family. And those are all things that I worked through my career with a wonderful husband we've been together for 54 years, and he supported me and I supported him. And we worked out how to do the kids' activities and how to do the things we needed to do together as a couple and as family, which came first, and then, our other things. So just kind of sharing what has worked. And also what I do love again is when individuals come with questions for me. That's very helpful. And sometimes one young woman that I really love working with in our distribution group of dealers, and she's a third generation in that dealership and is one of the top leaders. And she would always send me 2 or 3 questions before we'd meet. Well, tell me how you did this. Tell me how you navigated, working with a father, that kind of thing. And so I really appreciate that. That's a really fun way to be able to connect with other women.
That's awesome. Just as a reminder, if you have questions, we're going to save some time at the end to answer them, and our producer will be curating them a little bit. So drop them in the chat. That's going to be the best way to have us or Mary address your question. Let's go back for a minute to the 5 areas of wealth that you mentioned at the beginning. So we have financial wealth, but we also have spiritual wealth. We have intellectual. I know I'm going to miss one. Spiritual wealth, intellectual wealth, physical wealth, and relationship. How could I miss that one? Silly me. So talk about how you thought about that sort of portfolio of resources as you prepared, and now how you're paying attention to it while you're in this third season. Finances are obviously very important, but they're not the only thing. And the other 4 might be even more important. If you get the finances straight, then you don't have to worry about it as much. So give us a little insight into how this works out for you.
One of the things we do when we teach this class is the first thing we ask is, how would you complete this sentence? Wealthy is the person who, in fact, my husband and I just did a little session with some leaders in our dealers a couple days ago, and we shared that this is one of the things we've learned in life. And usually if you ask that question, you get wealthy is the person who has good health. Wealthy is a person who has a strong marriage relationship. Wealthy is a person who has a committed faith. Wealthy is the person who has good friends. If you started categorizing those, you'd find out most of them are relationships. And there's a great study that Harvard started in 1938, and it was at that time they only took young men and followed them throughout their life. Some of them were Harvard grads and some of them were Boston Street kids. And they found that the folks who were the happiest with their relationships at age 50 were by far the happiest and usually the healthiest at age 80. I just think it shows relationships are so important. So anyway, we just actually in our classes, we just take time to talk about those and ask questions about them, and really encourage people to think about each one of those 5 areas and what is one thing they could do to improve that particular area of wealth in the next years so that they're in a better place. For instance, we go over things like, do you have a will? Have you done any estate planning? And then usually for Vermeer team members, we offer other sessions that deal with wills and estate planning, that deal with a physical wellness session that deals with taking care of your soul from a spiritual perspective. And so trying to just, really kind of hone in on all of those. Intellectually, we talk about what are the things that you want to learn that you've always wanted to do and you've never had time to do. How can you put that into play? My husband tells the story of a patient he had who did not have much. He lived in a small room with a hot plate, but he said, I have a wonderful life because I live 1 block from the library, and I can go and the librarians have books for me, and I can read papers. And so intellectually, he had a lot of wealth that other people may not have. And there's just in every area of those 5 areas, you can think of 1 or 2 things that if I did this, I would be in a better place. I would be in a better place when I get further along in age. one of the things my husband and I did early on, and it was probably affecting multiple areas, was we came up with a list of individuals and couples that we knew were in third phase, so they were ahead of us in the life stages, and set up some times to meet with them and ask them what was important in their life and how were they feeling influential in third phase. And so that was just one of our to-do list. But I think for all of us, we have things we can do at any stage of life to focus on those 5 areas as well.
It's super helpful. I'm seeing some notes in the chat that people missed your comment at the beginning about the person that you worked with who took you through a process around these 5 phases, and then you went on to develop a process for Vermeer. So can you just repeat that so the folks who missed it can catch it?
Give him credit too. His name is Jerry Foster, and he wrote a book, Small Changes, Big Results, because he talks about the vector paths that we're on. And throughout his book, he brings up these 5 areas of wealth again and again and again with different questions or different things to think about. Like, you know, even in the financial area, one of the things my husband and I have been very intentional about, and Jerry helped us with that, is having a philanthropy plan. Really thinking about philanthropy. And so, I mean, we were thinking about local, maybe statewide, nationwide, worldwide, and thinking about the different needs that we have, whether it be in safety and then education and self-worth, kind of like the Maslow kind of matrix. And just thinking about where, not that we have to give in every area, but where are we giving and where do we want to be more intentional in our giving? We also have, set up a foundation where we now have 2 grandchildren as board members on our foundation to help them understand the importance of, if we're given a lot, we need to give back. And they understand that actually quite well already. But we want them to, be really engaged with us in that process of philanthropy. So that's just one thing that is in the financial area, which, we're not thinking about how can we be influential in all those areas of wealth.
That's so helpful. And I love that you took what you learned and then created a whole process around it for your people and the team members at Vermeer so that they could start thinking about this in their 50s or even 40s if they wanted. The language of third is roughly, 0 to 30, 31 to 60, and then 60 until whenever, right? And so by the time you hit 60, you may not be quite ready to quote unquote retire from your current job, but you better be thinking about all of these things. And so you've created a way for your team members to engage it, which I think is awesome. I do have a sidebar question that just occurred to me. I love that your grandchildren are on the board of your foundation. How is it shaping your giving? Is it changing how you give, or what kind of inputs do you get from that? And roughly how old are they? Are they Gen Z? Are they,
21 and 18.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
Can be on a board when they're 18. And we're adding a third one who's also turned 18. So she just turned during this year. We'll be adding her at the end of this year to the next year board. They're very astute, actually. So they ask good questions about things, but what our grandson's really into nature, and he's working at a forest preserve this summer. He's got a small group of students that he's the manager of, and he knows every tree. He started learning all about trees when he was 4 years old, and he's really into that. He's really into management of forests and land. And so we have made some gifts to Christian Environmental College that he spent some time at last summer. So things that are connected with them, we contribute to the college that they go to. So, trying to trying to think about the things that are important for them. And yeah, they just really joined the last couple of years, so it'll be interesting to see what we come up with as we go along, but we do, and we tell them this, that foundation, when we pass away, our wealth is going to be distributed between our foundation and our sons and our daughters' foundations. It won't be cash out, it'll be only cash to foundations, because we want the spirit of philanthropy to continue. And so our grandchildren will be the trustees if there's anything left in our foundation. And I guess we hope that they'll keep in mind what were the things we talked about together and that were important for all of us.
It's such a beautiful picture of generational wealth and how to steward it well, and I'm grateful for it. I want to switch gears a little bit. I would imagine, Mary, when people in your networks and circles got wind of the fact that you were retiring, I'm going to keep using that word with parentheses, or shifting gears into third, that you got lots of requests to do things, probably board requests, and we need you here and we'd like you here. You have a rich history of contributing to the economic well-being of privately held companies. And we're part of a group for many years called, it's not the G12, but it's connected to B12, the Business 12 or Business 20. All of that to say, my guess is you had lots of demands on your time. How did you sort through what to say yes to and what to say no to? It's easy to feel great about all these requests, but all of a sudden you can find yourself right back in the grind again if you're not careful.
So certainly in the last year, even, I've still been contacted about some corporate boards, and I just rolled off 2 of them. And I really feel that that's probably not the best use of my time or the best person to be on their boards, even though I do have a lot of historical knowledge and a lot of business knowledge. In some ways, I have been on boards, and I really do think that if you've got people who are active in business, they bring an awful lot to the board table. And so not being active anymore in the business is maybe not quite as helpful. So those are some things I've said no to, and I've always offered to say, hey, I'd be happy to get on a call with you. In fact, I just did this a couple of weeks ago, and share anything that might be helpful to you as far as board of advisors, or especially on family health businesses. But I don't necessarily need to be on those boards. So basically I kind of just look for things that I'm passionate about and that I feel I have something to contribute, and say no to the ones that just really probably aren't the best fit for me.
So what are the things that are bringing you the most joy in this season? What are the things that you're passionate about that you're intentionally committing time and energy and resource to?
Well, definitely my grandchildren. They're ages 13 to 21, so they're not little anymore. But one of the things, and this actually was an idea that came out of one of our very first classes with team members at Vermeer, is that before they have a sport event, a choir, a band, a theatrical performance, or something else that's special for each one of them, I text them and tell them I'm thinking about them and hoping that they have a great game or whatever, and that we're proud of them. And then if I go to the event, I take pictures and I send them the pictures and tell them, I always tell them positive things, only positive, and tell them how proud we are of them. And always copy my husband on it, and then he can chime in as well. So that's kind of number one. And our children too. Both of our 2 children are adults, and both involved in leadership at the company, both doing a fantastic job. They worked outside the business before they came in. It's part of our family employment policy. And they're both doing a fantastic job, but I still think they need encouragement too. So when I hear them do a speech, or I see that they're on a YouTube video, social media thing, try to give them input and feedback. I think I've learned that actually through my whole career. I gave a lot of feedback to dealers, to salespeople, to co-workers. And I mean, I literally I had a salesperson who, at their funeral, the family put out a note that I had written that person after a sales meeting. I mean, I just don't think we understand how important sometimes handwritten notes are to people. So I try to do a lot of encouragement that way. So that continues to be part of what I do. This morning, I was on a walk around in one of our plants with one of our chaplains. And it was really fun because I met some people I'd never met before because they've started within the last year or two. And it was just fun to meet them. And then I had chance to catch up with some people I was on a Kaizen event with like 20 years ago, which is a continuous improvement event. And another person who said, we used to see you walking around a lot more. Well, yeah, I did walk around a lot more when I was chair of the board and CEO. But I don't walk around as much, but it was still just great to connect with people. So that's kind of an ambassador role that we have at Vermeer after you go through the different offices and are in the chair emeritus role. So I enjoy that. And again, I enjoy some of the one-on-one calls that I have, the video calls or the in-person coffees that I have with people. And my husband and I enjoy doing some traveling and learning about new places and new things. I mean, we did a ton of traveling when I was in the CEO role. I mean, all over, a lot, all over the world. But often didn't have the time to dig into places, and really enjoy them. So on my strength finders, I'm a learner and I have input as two of the strengths. Well, those are all related to loving to learn more, digging into things. And so, so we just really enjoy that. So one of the things that was kind of on our bucket list was getting to all 63 national parks. We completed that this year in January and have just really enjoyed appreciating God's creation. They're a gift. Those national parks are a gift. And just, really being able to appreciate the beauty and the splendor of creation. And that's a special time, and being able to do that with a little bit more flexibility.
Well, it sounds like maybe your grandson's love of trees and nature was a little bit of, genetic DNA coming down through the ranks. That's awesome. I love that. So I see I also have input on my strength finder. So I can take in lots and lots of stuff without ever knowing the reason why sometimes. And I see lots of books behind you. This wasn't on our list of questions, but I'm curious to know, what are some things you've recently read or are reading right now that are really noteworthy that you'd like to share with this audience?
Yeah, well, we're later this summer, we're going to go do one of the Lewis and Clark Columbia and Snake River cruises. And so I just read Astoria, which is about the John Jacob Astors, trying to get to the West Coast and establish a trading center like New York City. It didn't happen like that. And boy, one disaster after another. But I mean, it's really good to understand those kinds of things before. I love to read books before I go on a trip that might shed some new light. But just some books that might be interesting for some of the other listeners. Arthur Brooks wrote a very good book, Strength to Strength, which has to do with third phase. One of my all-time favorites is Clayton Christensen's The Innovator's DNA. And I mean, I read it when I was the CEO with my team, and I've suggested it to a lot of people because it's really a lot about how innovation and it's all about asking questions, observing, networking, experimenting, and associating to be innovative. But the book gives some really good examples how you can do this with your kids or your grandkids. So it's not just a business book. I think it's a good personal book. And I'm a big continuous improvement person, and observing and asking questions are a big part of continuous improvement as well. So those are a couple that I've really loved. I've read tons of leadership books, more than I can put a handle on. But I love that. I love Todd Bowles' Canoeing the Mountains book. and he's written some other great books, just came out with a small group of 4 sets. Michaela's book, the book you and Michaela wrote together, is awesome. Life in Flux, right? Flux, Life in Flux.
Life in Flux. Yeah, that's it. And, we've joked, I was with Michaela last week, and we've said to each other more than once, anytime we talk about the book, whether we're together or individually, someone hears the title, Life in Flux. My life's in flux, did you write that for me? And we always say, yes, we did, right? Because that's the world we live in now. There is so much disruption and so much change happening. And, I want to just go back to one point, then we're going to move to some Q&A here in a minute that you made, that I think is really important. And it was, you went through a grieving process as you were transitioning. And that was a really important concept for us that we threaded through the book. We think we can make these changes like changing our socks, right? And okay, one day I'm going to be here, and the next day I'm going to wake up here, and all is going to be well. And the research that we leveraged from a book called Life is in the Transitions by Bruce Feiler says that we go through transitions every 12 to 18 months, right? And 4 or 5 big ones, maybe more, over the course of an adult lifetime. And, when you think about it, that means we're either coming into a transition, in a transition, or coming out of a transition of some kind almost all the time. And we have to kind of step back and give ourselves the space to do that work of grieving and letting go of what was, so that we have space for the new to come. I don't think we're very good at that. And I'm curious if you just comment a little bit on, how you embrace that season of transition and what it took to sort of prepare yourself and let go and be sad about it for a while.
I mean, I heard Bruce Feiler when I was kind of in that transition piece. I read his book. I think watched one of his YouTubes. And actually, my pastor gave me some other books on transitions. And what it made the point is that you do have to have some sort of milestones at the end of transitions. I think Bruce calls them also life quakes. And realize that, okay, kind of set a time, just like in the Bible, there were a lot of times where they built stone monuments, and it was a memorial, but it was sort of to commemorate something, but then to go on. And I think understanding that is important, whether it's a retirement quote coffee or a celebration with friends and family, that it's important to mark those transitions if you can. And then to realize that, my husband, it's almost been 17 years ago, we were in England, and his heart stopped 10 times and ended up getting a pacemaker. But this was in Chertsey in outside of London. And my sister-in-law wrote me when I let family know about this. She said, remember, Mary, each day is a gift. God gives us each day is a gift. And I think that keeping that in mind is so important too, that each day is a gift. If I have to tell people what the most important lesson in life is for me, it's been the fact realizing how important it is to appreciate each day, because you just don't know what the next day holds. You don't know what's going to happen with loved ones or with yourself. And yeah, we lost a grandchild 17 years ago, shortly after my husband's heart stopped multiple times. And that is still the thought that I kept having to say, is that, God is comforter, redeemer, savior, but not preventer. And we need to appreciate the fact that each day is a gift, and we need to treasure that, because we really don't know what the next day is.
Well, I couldn't think of a better word to bring us to a close of our conversation. And now I'm going to invite Naomi, our producer, who's been curating all the questions in the chat. There are lots of them. And she's going to bring some of those forward for you to respond to. So Naomi, if you're ready, let's engage some of those questions.
Thanks so much, Lisa. And thank you, Mary, for all of your insight and sharing your stories. We have so many questions. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, but I thank each and every one of you for submitting your feedback and engaging with this conversation. It's really, really rich. Mary Susan was asking if you have any advice about dealing with ageism in the workplace during as you're entering this third. She says she's at the beginning of it and has several more years of work ahead, but is running into some, resistance as she applies for jobs and employers are not excited about hiring her. How do we overcome or outmaneuver ageism if we encounter it?
Question, and I'm not sure that the best answer for this. I do know that we have tried various things at Vermeer, like even job sharing, where two people might share a job. So it could be a way to transition to less full-time. We've also done a lot of trying to prepare for transitions by having somebody almost two in a box to really shadow and learn everything. We just did this with our vice president of finance, actually. And we've done it in HR and we've done it in operations. And so almost like a mentor kind of transition relation. We do not, in fact, in our class, my husband and I will tell people, don't feel that you have to retire. I mean, we love your skills. We'd love to keep you on, if that's the right path for you. So we have many people that go beyond 65. We also have something that we call Friends of Vermeer. So someone who has decided to retire, they can come back as a friend of Vermeer in a very part-time basis. So it still brings that skill. We've had a lot of people who've come in like from a quality standpoint, and they're phenomenal mentors to younger team members on the floor, in engineering or wherever. So, and also some of our friends of Vermeer come back, they've been in the sales roles, they go back and help at trade shows, and they're fantastic. So I don't know that answered your question, but I think always, we need to be respectful of each person in our family of work and help them best in the transition. And that's why we offer these classes. But we also offer a lot of help with 401ks, and we have our own clinic and our own pharmacy at our Pella location. And our people just love that. It's just so handy and it's great pricing on pharmacy. We have a lot of courses we offer to people. So, just trying to help everybody be the best they can at whatever stage they're in. And I think it's important that we value people at every stage.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, I think, there's so many choices now available, and 65 is not, it has, it's the Medicare birthday, which I had last year, right? And I'm like, I'm not really thinking about it as the Medicare birthday. I'm not sure I like that. We just went to my husband's, he is 72. We just went to his 50th college reunion a couple of weekends ago, and I think he is not retired and doesn't see that happening for him for another couple of years for a variety of reasons. And he was the only one of his friends, and I just felt, maybe I'm biased because he's my husband, but I felt like he had a different kind of energy because many of them embraced the retirement of downshifting, right? His best friend from college, who was the best man in our wedding, is retired as a school administrator, quote unquote retired, and is now a state representative for his state and on the political campaign trail. And he had so much energy about all the things he was doing, whether he agreed with him politically or not, which I did. It was fascinating to see the people who were investing in new ways in this season. Just one more question, or Naomi, I'm going to go back to you. What other questions are surfacing? You don't need to hear more from me. There's so many in the chat.
Yeah, no, that's great. This could be for both of you. We had a question from Dale about how women in this third stage can best offer themselves in service to their church. And so wondering, what does your local church involvement look like right now?
I would say we just actually changed churches not fairly recently because the church we were going to consolidated from 2 campuses to 1, and it moved further away from us. We loved the church, but it moved further away, and we had to go on a very busy interstate to get there. Whereas we decided another church, which we like a lot, is where our daughter is. And it took us about the same amount of time to get there, but on much less busy roads. So we made that change. And, we haven't been as involved yet as I hope we will be, but I think it will be in some serving areas. Like this summer, our church provides lunches 3 days a week for kids out of school who could use a lunch. And we've definitely already been somewhat involved in the food shelf in Pella. I mean, it's amazing how the food necessities are everywhere. And our company, of course, has been involved in a lot of those kinds of things as well. But at this point, in my past, I've done a lot of teaching. Was a music major, so point in my time, I directed choirs and played the organ. And not doing that right now, but considering what those things might be.
Yeah, I think for me, I go to a small church, and we move away from Pittsburgh, where I live most of the year in the summer, so it's a little inconsistent. But for me, it's been a lot of mentoring of women who are earlier in their careers, who are really hungry, particularly working women, which is certainly the efforts of Women Work and Calling have really been focused on. How do we help Christian women engage in public life more effectively? And many women have come out of church traditions that encouraged, family and motherhood as being the thing. And if you work, somehow you're diminishing that. And it's a terrible message just for women to hear. And I feel like I was in and out, right? I took 5 years off when my child was little. Now they're grown. I went back to work, I want to say when she was about in first grade or so. And, I think there's seasons, and I think there are lots of ways that we can create healthier rhythms without diminishing the choices of different women in different seasons. And I like to be a voice for that. So that's one way that I'm serving. I also do a lot of work with nonprofits and churches in my city around just helping them to be healthy organizations, which is part of my own business right now. So that's what it is for me. What else, Naomi? We've got a couple more. Oh, I'm sorry, Mary. Go ahead.
So I was going to say, in some ways, it's not necessarily being as involved in maybe your own local church, but in other areas which are very effective in the community. And I'm quite involved in our charitable foundation of our company, Charitable Foundation. So there's a lot of meetings connected with that, and meeting people and seeing what the needs are and understanding if that's the right kind of fit for us or not.
Wonderful. Thank you guys both for sharing. I think we'll have time for one more question, one kind of last word from both of you before we wrap up with some housekeeping today. This one's from Kim, and I'm going to rephrase it just a little bit, Kim, for you. But is there any last input or advice on just those transition periods? It sounds like she's coming from full-time position and maybe shifting to a part-time, but no matter what transition people are going through, I'm thinking about life in flux, Lisa, and that, what are some things to keep top of mind in those transitional periods? And I think she's also asking, did you guys take a sabbatical, or would you recommend time off, things like that? Mary, why don't you go first?
Fun question, good question. I did a lot of reading to better understand, and on books on transition, prayer time, some solitude. I'm still not as good at solitude as I wish I would be. I'm working on that one. But yes, taking the time to be very intentional about really listening. What is it God wants to say in these periods, and where are you being led to in the next phase? But again, I think you can build on so much of experience and passion and expertise from your first and second phase.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm approaching my 66th birthday. And as I was approaching my 60th birthday, the year or two before, I had been leading a nonprofit in Pittsburgh for about 17. I'd been there for about 17 years and the CEO for about 8 or 9. And I knew I was ready to make a shift, but I wasn't quite sure what it was going to look like. And so I engaged a coach for that season. And I've had coaches and therapists and spiritual directors, and I'm sure you have too, Mary, in various seasons of life. And she helped me to really think through, okay, what did I want in this next season? I know I wasn't ready at 60 to stop working, but I had to make a gear shift for a whole variety of reasons. And part of how I set that up, because I gave myself some runway, was I left my job at the end of April in 2019, and I took the summer off. And I just gave myself some space to did a little bit of traveling, was doing some listening and meeting with people, and just kind of, and then we had a trip planned to Italy that fall. So that was sort of the culmination of my sort of quote unquote sabbatical. I was still doing a little bit here and there, but I think you have to give yourself space to step back and breathe and be gracious with yourself, and allow the gears to shift. You know, if you shift gears without pushing in the clutch, it makes an awful noise. I'm dating myself with a manual transmission, right? But we have to have space to push in the clutch and let the gears shift more naturally. And I don't think we do that. We have this expectation that we're supposed to just be able to get up tomorrow and do the new thing. And it doesn't work that way. There has to be a season maybe of a little confusion and not knowing, so that as the new comes, you can really embrace it. And I encourage women to do that and to find people to do it with who really know you and love you. I invited 3 people who know me very well in that season. And I said, I'll make you lunch. We'll sit out on my patio. And I want to hear your answers to 3 questions. What is the unique music you think I play? Who can hear my music? And where should I be focusing my best energy as you know me? And it was so valuable. And we don't do that for ourselves. I do it for other people all the time, right? But I was very hard for me to ask, but I said, I'm going to ask for 2 or 3 hours of your time. Would you come and join me in this exercise? And it was such a gift to me. And it gave me lots more clarity because I was gaining perspective as to how other people knew me and experienced me. And I would say, you know, for me, the piece of advice I would give is be gracious with yourself and allow yourself to have some space to do the reading and the reflection, the learning, and treat it as a transition, with a beginning and a middle and an end. It's not just a flip of a switch. So I think that's what I would share on that.
Someone tell me that certainly sometimes, it's fog where you're not really sure where you're going, but I think and again, and we've said this before, but it's okay to grieve some of the things.
Yeah, we're not good at grieving or lamenting and acknowledging the losses that we feel. And, you know, we could do a whole nother webinar on the losses that you feel in your physical body as you begin to age and enter this season, because all the things that worked before don't quite work in the same way. And preparing yourself for that is not always, some of them are very unexpected, which could be hilarious and fun to talk about. But I do think, I think grieving some of that is really, really important. So wonderful last word. Just so y'all know, thank you so much, Mary, for investing your time and energy in this. I think for everyone on the call and for those who signed up for the series who will get to be able to watch this, when they have time, so much wisdom here. And I've learned so much from you already. So I'm deeply appreciative. Look for the follow-up email that will contain resources from both the DePree Center and Women Work and Calling. There were 4 to this. These are the 4 webinars, this one being the last one. I thought I saw somewhere in the chat if there were cohorts for this kind of thing. DePree has run cohorts for third and are developing out a whole initiative around third. So keep an eye on the DePree Center and sign up for their mailings. Women Work and Calling continues to serve women across this whole arena of women in work in public life, particularly in this season. They do an amazing in-person event that also streams to lots of other sites in November. So Women Work and Calling 25. Naomi, you probably know better than I do how far the last audience reached, but it was pretty astonishing. It's now reaching globally. So there's a real need here for women and work to understand that they are to be called into public life in the workplace and in lots of other ways. And we care deeply about discipling and equipping you for all of that. Again, thank you. I'm so grateful, Mary, for your investment of time and energy, and to the DePree Center and Women Work and Calling for sponsoring this amazing series. let me just say a closing benediction as we step off here. Naomi, anything else we need to cover before we go? I want to make sure I'm honoring what we need to do here.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you guys so much for your time.
All right. Thank you, Naomi, for curating us so very well. Lord, for all the women on this call, may they feel your loving presence and your comfort and your peace as they navigate through various transitions in life. You are in those transitions. You promise that you are with us. And we need you. We need you to be with us and guide us. We need you through your word and through prayer and reflection. And we need you most often in relationships, our relationship with you, first and foremost, and with other women who are navigating the same thing. So please just bless and keep all these women as they go forth into the world to love and serve and care for all the things that you've equipped them and sent them out to do. We love you so much, and we're so grateful for how you love us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.